So what happens that when you use Amanita Muscaria, it has more than 15 healing benefits that we know today, elements inside of it. But the most important, which has the biggest interest for us in understanding how it works, it's muscimol. Muscimol, it's an ingredient, it's an element that has impact on gamma receptors. Gamma receptors are the main parts between our brain that connects the main part with the reptilian brain. In other words, when you're using Amanita Muscaria, you get muscimol, and your gamma receptors become, let's say, healed. And the impact of the reptilian brain lowers down in 25 times. Reptilian brain becomes peaceful. You don't have those conflicts inside of your head. You don't have those voices. You become just yourself. There's no conflict inside of you when you need to do something. There's no argument inside of your head how to achieve something, because we know the answers. Many answers we know to our lives. But it's that instant conflict inside of us where we fight with our soul against our brain, which creates distortion. And once you start to work with Amanita, it allows you to feel centered, to feel grounded. Amanita has absolutely no psychedelic effects. The main focus of this mushroom is to help the human to succeed in his physical form here right now. That the human can get control over his own avatar, over his own powers. And through that, eventually, when a human has connected with his avatar, with his soul, he becomes something, as is called godly, which has absolutely no impact of animal instincts. Through which, in old Christianity, they always showed that they defeated the beast. The beast is exactly all of the animal genetics and all of the animal instincts which are carved into part of our reptilian brain. Once the human overcomes them, he becomes a true human. And to become, you need to heal. And all of the world, what it tries to do, it tries to lower away our attention from ourselves and to focus it on the outside world. So eventually, Amanita was used in all those old times, and eventually if you will use it like they did in Christianity, that you would go on Saturday, you would drink a little bit Amanita microdosing and eat some mushroom, this would make that during the week, you would become very centered. You wouldn't have the manipulations from your instincts, from your fears. You don't have conflicts. You can easily do everything what you want to. And this is why Amanita was called the king of all mushrooms. This is his title for over 20,000 years between all shamans around the world. He's the king. That's it. Nobody compares. Everything rest is more childish, because the rest, it can bring you to spiritual world, it can open you things. But Amanita, it's very straight and simple. And it wants for the human to succeed in this physical world and not to travel somewhere.
Which in itself is more than enough when you connect to Earth and the spirits.
All of it belongs to a different world and cannot be transported beyond the hedge. Because out there, out here, it makes no difference who we think we are, because to the others, it won't matter who you are, but simply what are your intentions, what are you doing there, what do you want to achieve, or what you want to be or to obtain. What matters, I believe, is your essence. You look at me and I look at you, and the first thing that comes to mind is that we are humans and we see ourselves as human, and then possibly comes assumptions of gender, and then expectations, presumptions, suppositions, prejudices. That's when we know we have already failed as persons of the world, as entities of nature and life. It's not easy to see another person that more or less looks like us as something other than what we ourselves assume to be. But it is important, in my belief, that we should see past labels and identifications that clearly mark a distinction. This will help us to go over the hedge so we can come back inside and change the system forever and thrive, not as humans, but as persons of the world. I think we shall start to see some changes when the more we learn, the more we leave behind. And then it starts to get confusing and scary. But that's probably because we have been so dependent on self-identifications and relying on the familiar environments we grew up in, that when our progress starts to slowly deconstruct the illusions of our self-image, we are left confused, disoriented, scared, because for a time it will feel like we belong nowhere and we don't even know who we are. And we will have the tendency to turn back. We will start to question our worth or our value, because the sense of self-worth and value was measured by the opinions and self-identifications and the ways of life and things that the modern world tells us what makes us who we are. In moments like that, perhaps the best action is to not focus on the present and neither trying to see far ahead nor looking back, and simply carry on to see how far we can go. Our worth and value was never in question. In fact, I believe it is precisely by the abandonment of self-identifications when we go over the hedge that will give us a new perspective on our true value and worth, because it will no longer be determined or measured by self-manipulations and the manipulations of the collective.
Exactly.
And we realize that we are already valid just because we are alive. And worth is determined by our decisions and by the way we choose to express ourselves and engage with life. We shall start to function in a totally different way. Perhaps this is the true meaning of the abandonment of the ego we hear so much about, right? But no one cares to explain it properly, because it is usually explained as being an abandonment of self-love and self-care within society, and always an effort to change but remain within the same environment that was responsible for an unhealthy self-aggrandizement by the self-identifications we are forced to have in order to survive and be understood by others and by ourselves. Perhaps the true abandonment of the ego first passes through an abandonment of self-identification and almost abandonment of self-awareness in our societies, to become instead a person of the world, just like many others. But our worth and value does not disappear because, as I said, we are alive. And that already makes us valid on so many levels. We are educated to believe, accept, and even trust that the capacity to function inside a completely senseless and insane system is a manifestation of sanity. I think this perspective may change the way we look at witchcraft, traditional folk magic, and any pragmatic behavior we try to establish to create symbiotic relationships with nature, the environment, spirit entities, and the others. Are we truly being successful, or are we living under the illusion of success? Maybe the only way to find out is to run our life by the principles of nature and no small amount of humbleness as our first sacrifice in the process of deconstruction of the self in the pursuit of knowledge. We are not entitled to anything. Here, nothing will be given to us, yet everything is a gift.
Amanita Muscaria will help you to reconnect with your true essence.
Personally, when I see myself as a person of the world, there's a sense of freedom that helps me to engage with life and not only going beyond the hedge of social conceptions, but also moving past every boundary and experience a multitude of realities. All these social factors, opinions, labels, etc., matter little to powers and entities that are not confined to such elements of human society. They are, just like us, persons of the world, living, engaging, and participating in life, just like we should be. Do we truly believe to be true that particular land spirits will have a predisposition to communicate with us and us alone because we were born within a modern society that comprises this particular piece of land? That would mean that beyond any border of a country, the spirits won't engage with us because we are citizens of the other country, which also implies that spirits belong to countries and human notions of which lands belongs to whom. Nature is nature, the world is one, and we walk in it and on it. Going over the edge means death. It is the death of the self and of any identifications that form the self. Beyond the hedge, we are persons of the world, spirits in a way, entities living and engaging with life, which allows us to also engage with others and establish communication with others, with whoever, provided that we are able to respect and accept others' existences, obviously. I am not just talking about stepping over the hedge and to interiorize the idea that we are persons of the world. I'm also pointing out that from the moment we start to construct this mental structure, we begin to accept the death of the self, and we start the process of transcendence, to be mentally and physically ready to become aliens, in the sense of becoming strangers to the world, belonging to nowhere, and yet walking and living everywhere. Senses of boundaries cease to exist, and we become visitors, travelers, wanderers. It is this detachment that will alter perception, and we will begin to see the others, the ones we assume to be the invisible others, because we couldn't truly see them, and the world was only a reflection of what we assumed the world to be. The world was only a mirror image that reflected our self-identity and what we understood as personhood. When this is left behind at the edge, and we pass over it, our consciousness is adapted to the realization that there is no reality, not like we thought according to who we saw ourselves in the world. We start to see others that have always been there, but we couldn't see them before because we were expecting things to be the way we assumed the reality was according to our own opinions and assumed and even agreed sense of the real. Others over the edge are not like us. And if we do not expect to see the world as a reflection of ourselves, then we start to truly see it as it is and as it has always been.
When we start working with Amanita Muscaria, then we will take a deep look at ourselves and see. And a lot of trauma will be healed, one by one, in chewable bites, and you remove layer after layer of conditioning. And it is done in a very non-judgmental, very objective way. It just is, and then it isn't, and you just let it go. As simple as that. Yeah, and you can work through pain, but it's never overwhelming. And if you trust the wisdom of Amanita Muscaria, the spirit world, then you will feel guided. And you can always rely on that. It will truly liberate you from all of that.
Easier said than done, surely, truly. Besides, we do live within human societies, and this type of reality will always try to pull us back